You are welcome to the second chapter of Social Science First. The world in 20th century. The 20th century was a century that began on January 1st, 1901 and ended on December 31st, 2000. The 20th century was dominated by a chain of events that heralded significant changes in world history. World War First, World War Second, nuclear power space exploration, nationalism and decolonization, the Cold War and post Cold War conflicts, intergovernmental organizations, developments in emerging transportation and communication technology, poverty reduction and world population growth, awareness of environmental degradation, ecological extinction, and the birth of the digital revolution. We are going to discuss the important incidents in the 20th century. Let's look at the screen. It is the map of the continent of Africa. Let's zoom it. It is very wonderful that some of the boundaries of the African countries are straight. Look at the map of India. Is it straight? No. Why the African countries having the straight boundaries? Because the Europeans who reached Africa partitioned the countries for exploiting the natural resources. On the basis of some agreements, the European countries divided it by drawing straight lines on the map. I told you earlier that the European countries captured these countries for exploiting its natural resources. Once our India too was under the rule of the British. In the previous classes, you have learned the terms capitalism and imperialism. Let me explain more about capitalism and imperialism. In your previous classes, you have learned the Industrial Revolution that gradually spread from the England to other European countries, and the capitalists invested in factories and production was increased. The economic system in which production and distribution are controlled by the capitalists with the aim to increase profit is known as capitalism. Let me again, the economic system in which production and distribution are controlled by the capitalists with the aim to increase profit is known as capitalism. It resulted in the overproduction and the competition among the capitalist countries to assure their market and the center for getting the needed raw materials. Using political power and military forces, the European countries economically exploited the nations. Later, they became the colonies of the European countries. This process is called colonization. Using political power and military forces, the European countries economically exploited the nations. Later, they became the colonies of European countries. This process is called colonization. Let's prepare a flowchart for describing The features of colonization: industrial revolution, production increased, profit increased, capitalism, overproduction, and colonization. This is the point must be included in the flow chart. The condition of workers during this period was very tragic. They formed trade unions and started struggle. It increased their wages and diminished the profit of the capitalists. The capitalists started to invest their capital in colonies to overcome this issue. These are the factors. Look the screen. These are the factors that attracted the colonial masters to invest their capital in colonies. One, cheap labor. Second, availability of raw materials. And the third is low cost involved in manufacturing and selling goods in colonies. The competition among the European powers to achieve more colonies resulted into the phase of imperialism. The distinctive phase of flow of finance capital to colonies is known as imperialism. Imposing a nation's political, economic, and cultural dominance on another nation is a fundamental feature of imperialism. The distinctive phase of the flow of finance capital to colonies is known as imperialism. Imposing a nation's political, economic, and cultural dominance on another nation is the fundamental feature of imperialism. How did imperialism affect the colonies? Traditional economic system of the colonies was destroyed. Administrative and judicial systems were replaced. People in colonies were forced to cultivate cash crops in lieu of traditional food crops. Poverty and unemployment increased. Nature resources were widely exploited. Indigenous arts, literature, language, culture, and education system were destroyed. These are the effects of imperialism on the colonies. Let's watch a video clip. First World War began in 1914 and ended in 1918. New military technologies, the horrors of the trench warfare resulted in unprecedented levels of destruction. By the time the war was over and the Allied powers claimed victory, more than 16 million people, both the soldiers and civilians, were dead. That was the deadly First World War. Almost all the nations of the world, directly or indirectly, involved in it. Therefore, the war is known as First World War. The competition and conflict among the imperialist nations for colonies and markets led to the outbreak of wars. The first among them was the First World War. Here we are going to discuss the reasons and the results of First World War. The first reason is competition among the European powers. Second, military alliances. Third, aggressive nationalism. Fourth, imperialist crisis. Fifth, sudden reason or immediate cause. Let's learn one by one. The first point is competition among the European powers. The European nations competed among themselves in establishing colonies. This competition led to many conflicts and resulted into the mutual distrust and enmity. The second reason, military alliances. Look at the screen. There is two military alliance during the period. Triple alliance formed by Germany, Austria-Hungary and Italy. Triple Entente formed by England, France and Russia. The alliances manufactured and marketed many weapons. The third reason of the First World War is aggressive nationalism. The countries which consider own nation as the supreme and justified whatever be the actions of their nation promoted aggressive nationalism. It resulted into the formation of many movements. One, Pan-Slav movement, which was formed by Russia for uniting the Slavic people of Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece. Second national movement was Pan-German movement formed by Germany for dominating the Central Europe and Balkan provinces on the basis of the Teutonic people. The third movement that was formed by France, the revenge movement. It is established for regaining Alsace-Lorraine territories which was controlled by Germany from 1871. The fourth point is imperialist crisis. 1. Moroccan crisis. There was a secret pact between Britain and France in 1904 which gave an opportunity to claim of France over Morocco. The French claim over Morocco was opposed by Germany, which tried to send battleships against France. France agreed to transfer a part of French Congo to Germany, and Germany agreed to concede Morocco to France in return. Thus, the problem was solved temporarily, but the rivalry continued. Balkan crisis. The Balkan League, formed by Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, and Montenegro, which defeated Turkey, and there was a conflict based on sharing the war benefits, and the league was suspended. The last reason, sudden cause or immediate reason. In July 1914, Francis Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of Austria, was assassinated by a Serbian youth, Gavrilo Princip. The spark that ignited First World War was the assassination of Francis Ferdinand. Austria held Serbia responsible for it and declared war on Serbia on 20th July 1914. These are the reasons of First World War. Then turn to the results of the war. The First World War ended in 1918. The impact of the war were 1. Over 10 million people lost their lives or were injured in the war. Agriculture, industry, and communication system were destroyed. Poverty, unemployment, and inflation increased. Economic dominance of Europe diminished. Liberation movements in Asia and Africa strengthened. In a bid to bring about peace in the world, the League of Nations was formed. After the war, a peace conference was met at Paris in 1919 to discuss the post war situation. It was held under the leadership of Britain and France, who were the winners in the war. They signed different treaties with the defeated nations. The first and most important among them was Versailles Treaty. According to this treaty, Germany was humiliated. How the treaty humiliated Germany? 1. German colonies were divided among the victorious powers. Second, Germany was forced to pay a huge amount as war indemnity. Indemnity means penalty. 3. The Allies occupied the rich mines of Germany. The last and fourth, that is, war guilt was imposed on Germany and was disarmed. After the war, the world slipped into another tragedy, that is, economic depression. The United States of America emerged as a new economic power outside Europe after the First World War. What are the reasons behind it? 1. America was not affected by the war. Second, the European nations managed to get loans from the US. Third, American dollar overtook British pound as the basis of foreign exchange holding. These are the three reasons that paved the way for the emergence of America as a new economic power. The economic growth of US did not last long. The world was thrown into an economic crisis in 1929. What are the important impact of this economic depression? Look the screen. 1. People who became pauper because of war couldn't afford the commodities. Second, goods were kept unsold in factories. Third, European nations failed to repay their debts to the USA. Fourth, banks collapsed. Inflation became uncontrollable, acute unemployment, and poverty. To overcome this situation, European powers imposed huge taxes on colonies. Fascism and Nazism, under the leadership of Mussolini and Hitler, came to power.
I'm sorry.
Let's watch
I don't want to
a
be a
video clip.
That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of
This
peace and
was
fiction
Charlie
cries out for the
Chaplin's
goodness of
view
men,
on
cries
the
out for universal
dictatorship
brotherhood, for the unity of
that
us all.
became
Even
prevalent
now, my voice
in
is reaching
some
millions throughout the
European
world.
nations
Millions of
after
despairing
the
men,
First
women, and little
World War.
children.
Let's discuss what are the factors that led to the emergence of dictatorship in Germany and Italy. 1. Many European governments lost their power. Look at the screen. 1. Many European governments lost their power. Second, people were in misery. Third, unemployment, poverty, and inflation spread. Fourth, economic destruction, rivalry against the victors, aimlessness. Again, watch the screen. These are the characteristics of fascism: antagonism to democracy, glorifying the nation, justifying war, deifying the past, military dictatorship, opposition to socialism, adoring the purity of race, diffusion of aggressive nationalism, indoctrination of ideologies through arts, literature, and education, destruction of political rivals. We are going to learn the details of fascism, which was formed by Mussolini. Look at his comment: war is to man what maternity is to woman. According to Mussolini, waging war is not only a political activity but also a natural biological instinct. Look at the screen. These are the circumstances that resulted into the emergence of fascist party. 1. Italy got nothing, though she was with the victors in the First World War. Second, post-war destruction of industries, unemployment, increase in tax, inflation, etc., kept people away from the government. Third, industrialists, in fear of Italy moving to socialism, were prompted to support fascism. Under his rule, those who opposed the fascist party were executed. The aim of Mussolini was to restore ancient Roman Empire. As part of this, he adopted several symbols of ancient Roman administration. He formed a paramilitary force named Black Shirts. He suppressed the opponents through fascist policies. His aggressive national policy led him to conquer nations like Ethiopia, Albania, etc. Let's learn another shocking history of another dictator. Read the comments given by German pastor Martin Niemöller. Read the comments given by Albert Einstein about such a lazy people. Look at the screen, which gives the factors that helped Hitler, the leader of Nazi party, come to power in Germany. 1. The Treaty of Versailles, imposed by the victorious Allies on Germany after the First World War. Second, the economic destruction and inflation. Third, failure of German government and the resultant political uncertainty. Hitler propagated that the Jews were responsible for Germany's ruin and humiliation. Jews were massacred in specially built concentration camps. This is known as Holocaust. A military force, that is brown shirts, were formed by Hitler, and he formed a secret police troop named Gestapo 2. Hitler projected the purity of the Aryan race. All other political parties except the Nazi party were banned. Trade unions also were banned. Military service was made compulsory. He incited a spirit of vengeance. He used newspapers, radio, cinema, and education system widely to propagate ideologies of Nazism. Taking advantage of the feeling of revenge among Germans, Hitler adopted an aggressive foreign policy. Thus, he attacked Austria and Czechoslovakia. Then Germany formed alliance with Italy and Japan. Ultimately, the aggressive foreign policy and actions done by Hitler and Mussolini led to the outbreak of another world war.